Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our first office hours for the Microsoft Reactor Cloud Skills Challenge. We will be doing these weekly throughout the challenge. So we have one every Thursday between now and November 20th, and it will be at the same time. So that's 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. East Coast. Please feel free to join at any time throughout that hour. We will be on to answer your questions either about the topic, or if you're also having issues accessing any of the Learn modules or the leaderboard or anything like that, we will be able to answer those questions here as well. One of our speakers today, Mark, is going to give you a quick presentation on some of the topics that you are all going through on modules right now, and then we will open it up to questions after that. So Mark, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. So I'm Mark Gardner. I'm a cloud solution architect in the Midwest region. My specialty is in apps and infrastructure, but then I specialize in DevOps. And whenever I say that, I always make sure to clarify that I'm talking about DevOps, the philosophy, and not necessarily DevOps, the product, or not exclusively, anyways, DevOps, the product, Azure DevOps. So that's me. We also have Ryan Berry. I don't know if Ryan, if you also want to introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. Yeah, Ryan Berry. I'm a cloud solution architect also on a national team. So I work with customers all over the country in many different verticals and industries in a application development capacity. So my background is in all things app dev pertaining to Azure, as well as the IoT space. So I focus pretty heavily on that, which has a dev angle to it with regards to deploying code down to IoT edge devices and that sort of thing. So happy to be here today.
Awesome. So I am going to present as soon as I should have organized my monitors first, but I'm going to present a brief slideshow, and we can do this however everyone wants to do this. I'm happy to ask questions as they come up, but I have a prepared presentation, just a real short one, to talk about site reliability engineering and kind of the core principles there. And I shared the wrong screen, so of course that happens. So hopefully I didn't blow everybody's monitors out there. I have an ultra wide, and I try not to share that one because the resolution generally kills. So, we're going to talk about site reliability engineering, which is something I also like to call pragmatic DevOps, and we'll kind of get into like what I mean by that as we sort of delve into the topics. The first thing is what is SRE? SRE being the shorthand for site reliability engineering. So it was a principle or a practice that was founded by Google mid late 2000s, kind of in parallel with sort of the DevOps movement, and it's. So Ben Traynor runs the SRE team at Google, and he has this famous quote of SRE is what happens when a software engineer is tasked with what used to be traditional operations, used to be called traditional operations. And so the kind of idea here is that, operating in a cloud world is not the same as operating within a data center, and it requires a shift in skill sets for how we think about maintaining and operating our workloads, our solutions in this new environment. And the types of people who tend to do that operational work look a lot more like engineers, like software engineers, like application developers, than they do your traditional IT pros that you might see within a data center. So like that's a nice catchphrase and all, but what does it really mean? So more specifically, SRE is a focus on maintaining an appropriate level of service for a given system. And the key word here is appropriate, because a lot of people will come in and just say, well, I want my system to be up 100% of the time. And realistically, that's impossible, right? Like servers have to be patched, outages are going to happen, things need to be upgraded. So 100% uptime is an unattainable goal. So, and even if it were attainable, it would be wildly expensive to do so in terms of the redundancy, the effort, everything that you would put into to get those higher levels of reliability within your system. So like defining an appropriate level is really this, it should be a joint effort between the key stakeholders within the system. So this would typically be like your business, and coming to some sort of agreement between engineering and business on, you know, what is acceptable in terms of the reliability and the stability of the system. What do you really need, and what are you actually willing to pay or give up in order to reach that target? And so the solutions within an SRE really focus on building in that reliability and also building in the scalability of the solution to be able to meet those needs of the business. And so how do we define that? So the key of SRE is that it actually provides a prescriptive framework for how we want to define the reliability of the system and how we want to measure that. And it does it through these two key indicators, or these two key metrics. And those are your service level objectives, SLOs, and your service level indicators, or SLIs. So SLOs are, these are the things that you co-define with your business, and they're going to be business or user focused. So kind of a canonical example would be if you have an e-commerce platform, right? And one of the systems within that is your checkout system. Your service level objective might be that a user will be able to, you know, hit the checkout button and receive a successful response within 2 seconds. So that would be your service level objective. Your service level indicators will be the things that help you measure that service level objective and determine whether or not you're actually achieving that. So if the stated goal is successful checkout within 2 seconds, your indicators of that are going to be measuring response times of the microservices that compose that system, and then any queues or data stores downstream, and measuring basically each of those components and then their total impact on that response time back to the user. So that's your SLI and your SLO. A lot of people also like to throw in the SLA because that's a familiar term for a lot of us, the service level agreement. But the thing that you have to remember is that service level agreements are generally business or financial constructs. So there's some sort of like warranty between the business and the customer saying that if we fail to meet whatever this level of service is, then we will take these actions on your behalf to rectify the situation. That's not something that engineering really cares about because, you know, we're not responsible for that agreement, that negotiation with the customer. What the site reliability engineer really is going to focus on is really just those first two things, the SLO and the SLI. The business is ultimately going to be the ones responsible for the SLA. So having described this, a lot of people tend to think that SRE just sounds like a new name on an old problem, right? Like this is just ops, right? Like these people are just, they're responsible for keeping the system up. I have guys that do that today. We call them operations. They sit in the data center and stare at the monitors all day. And when things turn red, they go and hit the reset button and it turns green again. But that's not true with an SRE team because an SRE team is an actual empowered stakeholder within the system that they own. And they have some key mechanisms that they leverage to control the state of that system and to control effectively the things that they care about, which is the reliability and the scalability of the system. And those mechanisms start with the quality gates within the system. So SREs are actual contributors to the code base itself, and they are stakeholders within the pipeline. So in your DevOps world, this is your CI and your CD. And the SRE teams are contributors in both of those phases as well, in terms of helping to define what that pipeline looks like and what they consider to be an acceptable product that ships through that pipeline. So they control the quality gates within the pipeline that determine whether or not a product can move from one stage of release to the next stage. So that's one of the mechanisms that they can use to kind of control and enforce that they don't want. So in the traditional problem of DevOps, right, is that when you have this separation between the operational responsibilities and the development, then you get into the situation in which the dev team will just throw it over the wall and the ops team just have to support it. Giving control of the quality gates to the SRE team allows them to say, we're not going to support it unless we feel comfortable supporting it. And we feel comfortable supporting it when we know that the quality that we demand is baked into the product. And we enforce that quality through things like test automation. So some of the quality gates might be test result analysis to make sure that all the tests are passing, or they might be code coverage or code linting or things like that, looking for things within the code that are not of sufficient quality that they don't really want to be supporting in production. So, and even if quality gates pass, you can still have products that get into production that just aren't as stable as you would like them to be. And so with your defined SLIs or SLOs of, so say that you have this defined objective of the website being available 99.95% of the time, but dev keeps the dev team keeps adding features to the application and shipping those features, and those features aren't necessarily stable enough. And so your website uptime for a given window falls below that target threshold. This is what we call the error budget. So that 5%, that 99.95, 100 minus 99.95 is 0.05%. That's your error budget. The SRE team basically has the ability to say that once you exhaust that budget, once feature development has pushed the reliability of the system below the acceptable threshold, then we as an SRE team can push back and say that we will not accept any more feature development until you have stabilized the product in such a way that we feel comfortable accepting it again. And that's one example of how error budgets get used. They can also, they don't always necessarily stop feature development, but they act as a mechanism in which the SRE team can push back on development and say, you're not meeting your targets here, and we need to take some sort of corrective action. And jumping down and ahead just a little bit. So one of the, on the counter of that, business can sometimes be afraid of, I don't know that I want to delegate a power to stop releases to a team, like to anybody other than myself. And so there's this concept of a golden ticket in which you can hand out a finite number of golden tickets to the business, and business can redeem those to bypass, even if you have violated your error budget, even if the system is unstable, but you still have like some core features that you really need.
Mark, can you hear me? His sound has gone out on our end. I apologize if all of you cannot hear him either. We are going to try to ping him and bring him back, get him back on the call. Just give us 1 second. I apologize. All right, so while we are waiting for Mark to regain his audio, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the live Q&A chat. You should all have access to that. It looks like 2 little text bubbles with a question mark in it. Ryan is happy to answer your questions, and then as soon as we get Mark's audio working again, we can resume his presentation.
I know he's talking about this, but I could chime in and say, customers I work with who have site reliability teams, I've seen them involved in being able to improve the performance of applications, or I have a customer I'm working with that has a very large online ordering platform, and I'm working directly with their site reliability team to improve some of the components and underpinnings or their usage of certain underpinnings and components of Azure to be able to drive forward and make their application more resilient. So there's a number of different angles or lenses that I've seen them explore and evaluate applications for.
Yes, I did see the question about rewinding the presentation. It is live, so we're trying to get a hold of Mark right now. I think he's on Do Not Disturb since he is presenting. So once we can get a hold of him, we will start from where he left off. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about what Mark was speaking about, or about the DevOps module or the Azure Fundamentals module, please feel free to ask those now, and we are happy to answer those. Ryan, have you taken the AZ400 exam for the DevOps module? Are there any tips you can share with us on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I just took it probably a month and a half or so ago. So I know it's been out a while, but and I work with a lot of customers in a DevOps capacity. You know, we here at Microsoft have training requirements every year, and that was actually one that was on my docket this year. So so I went ahead and took it. You know, definitely have some familiarity with you know, things, you know, what's possible to do with Azure pipelines. You know, background on you know, thinking about things like GitHub and being able to know how you know, how to employ GitHub both in, you know, an on-premises manner as well as a hosted manner. You know, you know, some knowledge on how to structure teams in different ways. You know, teams and projects to be able to support different types of you know, release regiments, and how you, if it's a you know, situation where you have a public-facing application that you're taking pull requests, or an internal application that you take pull requests from, and how you actually incorporate that into your release pipeline to be able to, you know, push that application out into production. So I think those are some good things to kind of think about to prepare.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like Mark is back. So Mark, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry. It looks like Windows Update decided to run in the middle of the presentation. So I think my audio drivers got screwed up, and I apologize for that.
No worries. If you want to share your slide, it was probably, I don't know exactly when it cut out.
All right, I'll start sharing, and you guys tell me where. Man, and I was like going so good. I was talking.
I know, we could see you on the camera, and you were like going for it.
All right. Okay. All right. So, tell me where I left off.
You were on the slide with the ticket, and I would say you're a few minutes probably into that slide.
Okay. So we had talked about quality gates. Have we talked about error budgets yet?
You got down to the golden tickets. I think you're talking about that.
Okay. So I'll just rehash golden tickets real quick. So golden tickets were back to error budgets. Error budgets are a mechanism for pushing back on features when the stability of the product drops below the threshold, the target threshold of the system. So the concept of the golden ticket is you can give a finite set number of golden tickets to your business to allow them to push through. So you know, the stability of the product drops below the target threshold. You suspend feature releases in order to focus on stability of the product, but business has some sort of critical project that they have to deliver. They have to deliver it on time. They can redeem a golden ticket to go ahead and continue to deliver, even though it may continue to drive the stability of the product below the target SLO. The key here, though, is that the golden tickets are finite, so that, you know, business can't just constantly overrun or overrule the SRE team's focus. You know, allowing the SRE team to still, you know, be a stakeholder and still maintain control. And then the last one I think I talked about last was the concept of the toil budget. So toil is this concept of just kind of it's the drudgery work within the system. It's that work that you have to do that every product kind of has associated with it, but that doesn't really provide any direct value to the business or to the customer. And so toil budgets are a construct within the SRE team to help to allow them to provide value and to solve, scratch that itch that's bugging them, because toil tends to fall on the SRE team in terms of who has to do that work. So the toil budget is an allocation in their, in what they're allowed to do within their sprint or within their backlog, depending on how their team is structured. It's an allocation of work that they're allowed to automate. So eliminate toil. So spend some amount of cycles focused on that work that you hate doing, automate it, or redesign the app, re-architect the app in such a way that you can get rid of it and push that away. And the key understanding here is that the SRE team is actually making meaningful improvement to the product through the elimination of this toil, and they are contributing to the product code base just like the application team would as well. So, so we understand what an SRE team is now. The next thing is, how are SRE teams aligned to applications? And the key here is that not every application or every product is going to deserve an SRE team. And the reason for that is that SREs, so think about what a site reliability engineer is. This is a highly skilled individual. They are not only just a good application developer, but they also have a strong background in traditional operations, in infrastructure management, in cloud automation. Like, these are very highly skilled individuals, and as a consequence, they tend to be expensive and rare. So building an SRE team for every single application doesn't make financial sense for most businesses. And on the flip side, you'll have, particularly in organizations that have a higher level of DevOps maturity, a lot of product teams that are practicing, good DevOps practices don't necessarily need an SRE team because they can handle the operational aspects of their applications themselves. So there's sort of this threshold at which an application becomes critical enough that it becomes feasible or practical for the business to then align an SRE team to that team. And the other thing to understand is that this is not a static configuration. It will change over time. Apps will become more important, and then apps that have been important will become less important, and it may not make sense in their life cycle for them to have an SRE team anymore, and they might get pushed down into a more traditional operational model. So it will change with time. And so last slide, I just wanted to provide some sort of visualization of, like, how does this all work? How does SRE relate to DevOps? So as I mentioned at the beginning, DevOps is a philosophy, and it's this sort of framework for how we operate. SRE is an actual team it is pragmatic. It is a prescriptive model for how you can operate, and it implements DevOps principles, but it shares those principles with the dev teams and also with the existing operation teams. So if you try to smash all this stuff into a Venn diagram, you get something sort of like this, in which the SRE team and the dev team are peers that communicate with each other through the DevOps model, while they do not fully replace the operational responsibilities of the organization. And that's the end of my slide. So, and hopefully everybody could hear me this time. So, can you guys? Do I get that?
That was great. We could hear the rest of that. Thank you.
Awesome. So
we did get one question. Anonymous said, toil equals addition of nice to have feature.
No, toil is not the same thing as like a nice to. So toil is it's administrative work associated with the product. So think about things like, you have to do so like code scans, detect patch updates to some of your dependent frameworks or things like that. That kind of work that you have to do, but it's not critical to the product itself. It's just this stuff that has to get done. or updating if you manually maintain like a CMDB, right? Like updating the CMDB whenever you add a new server or, add new service dependencies or things like that. Like that, those would be examples of toil, things that could be automated, but, they tend not to be because they're just, it's easier to just have like the junior guy in the team go do that work, right?
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, please feel free to use the Q&A section to ask some questions while we're waiting for some questions to come in. If you haven't had a chance to sign up yet for the Cloud Skills Challenge, I have put the links into the chat. We do have 2 different tracks. We have the DevOps track, which does have a certification at the end of it if you do want to take that. And then we also have an Azure Fundamentals track. It doesn't have a certification at the end, but it is still a lot of really great information. So I definitely recommend signing up for both of them and checking them both out and seeing what's of interest to you. And then we have a few more questions that came in. So one was, how much allowance are you given for golden tickets, toil, etc.?
Sorry, how much, what was the?
How much allowance are you given for golden tickets, toil, etc.?
So it depends. The toil budget is analogous to like the refactor budget within like an application team. So, sort of the rule of thumb is something like 20%, but it's really contextual, and it's going to be something that's going to be negotiated for that team. On the golden ticket side, the key is, so the key understanding here is that you want the SRE team, you've given them responsibility for stability of the platform. If you take that away by giving so many golden tickets to the business that the SRE team is never actually able to exercise any of their power or influence to affect, their mandate, which is stabilize the platform, then they're going to become disaffected and they're going to be ineffective on doing their job. So you want to, the golden tickets are really kind of an exceptional thing. So it should be a finite and small number that you hand out. I can't give you a specific number on what is right, because again, it's going to depend. Like if you're doing 100 releases a day, you're probably going to hand out more golden tickets than if you're doing 3 releases a year, right?
Awesome. Thank you. And then another person asked, is SRE more quality assurance than engineering or engineer?
It's part of the job, but it is not. So a lot of organizations have QA roles or test engineers, and those are really like those are a separate discipline and a separate role. Now, I mentioned, so the thing about the SRE is that the SRE it's a very highly skilled role. They dip their toes in a lot of things. And they tend to be Renaissance people. Like they have a very broad and very deep set of knowledge that covers the breadth of the thing that they're working on. And quality is definitely part of it, but it is not like their sole focus, like you would see with a traditional quality assurance engineer or a test engineer.
Great. And then one other question that came in, and it says, how have you seen the SRE role evolve since it was first developed at Google?
Yeah, so Google is definitely the most famous for doing it, but a lot of people have adopted the practice, and a lot of so Google, no surprise, very opinionated on how things should be done, and those opinions have definitely changed as others have come on board. So specifically to like the golden ticket model, so Google is very, very explicit that in their definition of SRE, that when the error budget is exceeded, feature releases will stop, and the only way to bypass feature releases are golden tickets. A lot of other organizations have seen that as a very extreme view, and that is completely fair. And so a lot of organizations have adopted the SRE role of, we don't necessarily stop feature releases, but at that point in time, the SRE team changes the mix of work that happens in the development backlog, so that they can, ideally converge at some future point back at the target stability. So like that's one very public way in which the kind of the role has changed. On the flip side of that too, you do see a lot in the industry of organizations just rebranding their traditional operation roles as SRE, like just changing those people's job titles, but not necessarily changing the way in which they work. So you have to be careful too. Watch for that, because that is not like changing an ops person and just calling them an SRE isn't the same thing as doing site reliability engineering.
All right, that's great. So we have a couple more questions that have come in as well. So I'll start with the first one. Do you need to have a development background to be an SRE?
Not necessarily. Again, so if you look at sort of Google's, how they built the team, their original hiring practice was to build the team as a 50-50 mix. So you would have about half the people on the team coming from a software development background and half the people on the team coming from a traditional operations background. And then you would slam those people together, and you would create an environment of knowledge sharing and kind of force meld the two spheres of knowledge within the team. Today, at the time they did that because these people didn't really exist, or the handful that they did were so rare, and they needed far more than they could find. So this was sort of a way for them to incubate and build those skill sets. Today, you can find people who are like SRE skilled. The key is that you do need to have that mix. You need to be able to speak both software dev and IT operations to be effective within the role. Which background you start from, what your starting point is less important than the skill, being able to speak to both today.
And I'll use the example when we were having some audio problems, and I chimed in about a customer I work with who has a very large e-commerce platform, and their SRE engineers do have a fair amount of dev background, enough to be able to do things like looking at application performance monitoring output on particular exceptions that might be of similar nature, and being able to correlate those to some defects that were really rooted at the same place. So instead of just saying, hey, I've got exceptions on an order page, exception on a checkout page, or a product catalog page, being able to see that those two were actually tied together with some other underlying core system component that was actually having an exception. So that comes to that complete feedback loop that the SRE then gives to engineering to fix it.
All right, perfect. And then another question is, SRE roles vary between enterprises. Not every firm wants to invest in hiring dedicated SRE team. What is the business justification for starting an SRE team?
Yeah, so I tried to touch on that. It really is, it's a value proposition, right? So some way you have to quantify that the value of having increased reliability of the system is worth the investment in the SRE team. You can, like, if you can quantify that in dollars, like, having, an extra 10 hours of availability on my e-commerce platform will deliver X millions of dollars, then that becomes pretty easy to justify the expense of the team, knowing the fixed cost of whatever the team would be that you would build. If you don't have those numbers, it becomes a little bit more of a balancing act. But the point is that, the thing that again, SRE teams, these are going to be expensive teams, and making that investment has to be justified by the system that they're going to be interacting with is a critical system, and that it has enough business value associated with it to be worth that investment. Kind of a non-answer, but
yeah.
You know.
I'll go back to my example of the e-commerce platform. That's driving bottom line revenue to this customer I'm working with. That that site goes down or has an impact, that is the primary entry point of revenue for this organization. As such, it makes sense to invest in that. Working with another software as a service provider who has an ISV, independent software vendor that we work with, that also has their revenue comes in through the products that they host on behalf of other customers. That organization as well has invested in a site reliability team. So that's where both of those are pretty obvious cases where it makes sense to invest in a specialized SWAT team to be able to optimize and keep the lights on of a platform that's bringing in revenue.
All right, and it looks like we have a couple more questions that are a little bit related to the Learn module as well, the DevOps Learn module. So the first one says, is the SRE team role typically technical team lead? Reading the SRE section, and I'm guessing they mean of the Learn module, I'm still not 100% clear on DevOps and SRE roles.
So, the first part, the easiest part of that is that so DevOps is not a role. I know people hire like DevOps engineers, but it's not a role. Typically what I see is the DevOps engineer is really just a fancy name for an automation engineer. They tend to be focused on like the pipeline aspects. But remember that DevOps, the philosophy, covers much more than just automations or those particular aspects of the application lifecycle. DevOps is much more a philosophy of like how you measure and improve your application and how you align to your business. So a DevOps role is a non-role. You should have a DevOps organization that should encompass a large swath of IT and business. You should not have individual roles that are DevOps roles. SREs are roles. They are a prescriptive implementation of DevOps focused on the reliability of the system. And the SRE is not going to be like you wouldn't have an SRE be the technical lead of the development team. You might have an SRE who is embedded in the team in a similar capacity to how you have test engineers who are embedded in the team. Like it's totally fine to have SREs that are part of the team. They aren't necessarily going to be the technical lead of the development team, though. The development team is still going to be the development team. They just might also encompass an SRE role. More commonly, you will see the SRE be a separate team who just has shared responsibility with the dev team.
Okay, perfect. Ryan, was there anything you wanted to add to that one?
No. So those are some. That's a pretty complete and solid response.
Perfect. And then does the DevOps learning path provide the best modules for becoming an SRE? Are there other paths on Microsoft Learn I should explore?
I would say it's a start. So I'll go back to like the SRE is again these tend to be very highly skilled individuals, and they tend to run broad and deep. And as we're all, well, we're not all, but a lot of us are IT generalists these days, right? So like we know a little bit about a lot, but like SREs know a lot about a lot. And by nature, they need to be effective within their role because they do touch so many parts of the product lifecycle. So starting with the DevOps learning path would be a great place to start, but really spread that learning out across many paths as well. Like you need to be strong in software development, but you also need to be strong in like infrastructure management and networking and performance monitoring. those are all going to be kind of some core principles, and those are going to be spread across many different modules.
Yep, and there's some, modules on, application insights is our solution to doing application performance monitoring. There's some areas that might be a spot you could start in, and things on pipelines and automation. There's a number of aspects that kind of encompass that. But
great. All right. Well, that is all for the questions at the moment. We can give a few more minutes. We still have about 10 minutes left, so we will keep it open. And yes, Nina just put in the chat as well that we will be covering more of the DevOps Learn module in the upcoming office hours. So if that is one of the learning paths that you are going through, and you can make the make the office hours, we will be going through more parts of that. We also will be recording all of these, and they will be up on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube page during the 4 weeks of the challenge. And it looks like we just got a question. So we got another question that said, by generalist, do you mean they might wear any of, or might have any various titles? Any of various titles?
Potential. I mean, I guess maybe. The formal SRE role is in most organizations, anywhere that I've seen it, SRE is a role with an official title. Now, that's not to say that you might see people performing that function that have, more traditional like IT operations titles or roles. I mean, it's possible, but what I meant when I said like generalists are the way I don't want to like put down myself or my peers within my role, but kind of the idea of the cloud solution architect role at Microsoft is that we need to know a broad, like we need to know a fair amount, a moderate amount in terms of detail level across a broad swath of products and things. And that is also just part of the nature of being able to build solutions in the cloud, because for the vast majority of solutions, it's a lot of integration work. Like you're taking, off-the-shelf components, plugging them together to build interesting business flows. So the idea of the IT generalist is somebody who has sort of that, mid-level, like 200, 300 level understanding of many different things. The SRE is not is more, I would say, is deeper on all of those things than your typical generalist. Like they're going to be at the 400 or even 500 level on most topics spanning the scope of a given system. Does that make sense?
I think so, but we'll see if there's a follow-up question on that one.
Sure.
I'll use my customer as an example. Like they have individuals who can take memory dumps of their running application and be able to look under the covers and do forensics analysis about what's going on, to be able to provide extremely specific feedback to their engineering teams on what needs to be fixed. So that's an example of going deep. That they're generalists across the aspects of the infrastructure that the application is hosted and running on. Things like load balancers and network topology, all of that kind of stuff. But they are extremely deep in being able to peel back the layers of the onion to figure out what's going on when needed.
Great. And then for a couple more questions came in. This is a very, very popular topic. This is great. For what job titles does the challenge courseware prepare attendees? So I'm guessing they're asking for this DevOps learning path, what roles might this prepare them for, or jobs might this prepare them for?
Okay. So I kind of mentioned that like DevOps isn't a title. So again, organizations do create DevOps engineers. And the way I tend to see that manifest is those tend to be like automation engineers. They're focused on building CI and CD pipelines for the vast majority of scenarios. That definitely, like, I am not I'm not downplaying the importance of that role. The DevOps course, the learning path certainly could prepare you to move in that path. I tend to look at the DevOps course though as being more helping you understand the broader philosophy of DevOps and DevOps the philosophy, and that being more of like the holistic approach to measuring, automating, learning, in building that culture and business alignment around the product, which is more of how I think about DevOps. So it's not necessarily a specific role. It's more of helping you better integrate into a DevOps culture within within whatever IT role you might be within your organization.
I see solutions architect was chimed in as another title. I think that's part of it. So to me, you know, I mentioned at the beginning, my background is in application development. And what I find, you know, for me, in that being a developer, you have to work with teams. The tools that are available for teams to work and engage with one another in our world is Azure DevOps and GitHub. So the AZ400 and the learning path associated with it provides a really solid foundation for understanding the various features and functions and how to do things like branching and merging strategies. The CI/CD pipelines and release automation is a piece of it. Setting up security appropriately. How you go about collaborating on tasks that are assigned to you with your teammates. All of those aspects are important to be productive as a developer, and I think this is just creates a well-rounded situation for somebody who is a developer looking to be more immersed in some of the tooling and capabilities to help you with your day-to-day job, or on the administrative side, being able to manage that environment. Because as Mark mentioned, I too work with a lot of customers who have focused individuals who do who have the title maybe DevOps engineer that manage the GitHub environment, manage the DevOps environment, and that's usually comprised of the CI/CD pipelines and security and permissions. So that would be another thing that this would be well suited for. So kind of a couple of different lenses you can look at it with, I think.
All right, and then we had one a follow-up to the last question, Mark, that you answered, and so I think it's saying, like, while there's the understanding that DevOps isn't a title, for the DevOps learning module, are there roles that could prepare them for? Maybe that's for an SRE role, or are there other roles or jobs that it could help prepare them for, or would be useful for?
So it certainly can prepare you for an SRE role. That would be like if you were targeting a specific role, generally I would say SRE roles and individual contributor roles within a software development organization. So that might be like an application developer, it might be a test engineer, it might be an automation engineer. Those would all be target roles that understanding the DevOps module, the learning path, would definitely help prepare you for. I don't think there's like necessarily a very specific and narrow finite set of roles that it targets. I think it does cut broadly because DevOps is a cross-cutting concern across all of IT. So understanding DevOps is really important for all IT roles today. But if you're forced, like if you're holding a gun to my head and you're forcing me to pick like a handful of roles, it would be like software engineer, automation engineer, test engineer, SRE. Those would probably be the primary ones that would most benefit from learning this.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, we are at time. If you have any more questions or about this topic or about the Learn modules and signing up for the challenge in general, I am going to put a link to our Microsoft Reactor Redmond meetup page. Feel free to message us on there or on any of our US Reactor location meetup pages. So we also have a San Francisco one and a New York one, and we'll be happy to follow up with Mark or Ryan or answer the question ourselves if I have the knowledge to do that. So I will add that into the chat. And then again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope to see you at our next office hour, which will be next Thursday, November 5th. And again, it'll be the same time, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you, Mark and Ryan. That was really, really great content, and thank you for taking time to answer all the questions.
You're welcome.
No problem.
Thank you.